Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. And I'm really excited to have with me a friend, a colleague, someone who I call on quite often to talk about financial options. So we welcome James Giese. How did I do on your name this time?
That's great, Tim. James Giese is perfect.
Yes. Finally. I mean, for a while, you got to understand is that I grew up, in the 70s. And so I had, I had good old
right.
Greasy
Right.
to root for. So therefore I see your name and it's like Greasy without
when I was a kid, everybody would say, was I related to that quarterback? He was a quarterback, right?
Yeah. Good job.
I'm not trying to age you or anything, but
I did that myself. Right. So James is with an organization called Wispact, which, as you can tell by the first three letters of its name, is based in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And so we will be dealing with talking about Wisconsin resources, but we wanted to start with just having a discussion about what are some of the financial options available for people with disabilities.
Sure. And Tim, I'll kind of take it away from that. So how I like to talk about these is kind of give a general overview, kind of a strategic level view of some of the financial options that are available to individuals with disabilities. And so an estate attorney told me one time, think of it as the three-legged stool. So you've got income is one leg of the stool, any kind of public benefits. And then this third leg of the stool is financial tools that you can use. And these are not checking accounts or savings accounts, because I'll get into some of the regulatory aspects of them, but they can be used like checking accounts and savings accounts for individuals with disabilities.
Excellent. And I just want to let people know that we're going to be doing this more in a conversational type format, but I know James has a lot of information and some presentations he's done for us in the past. So if you would find that information be helpful, he has put his information in the chat box, so just email him and he can get that to you.
And Tim, I would say that I goofed up. I put director of Wispact. I am not
I like that.
The director of Wispact. I am just the director.
Congratulations, James.
I have promoted myself here, but I am just the director of outreach. And just very briefly, I do like to talk. So Wispact is the manager of the Special Needs Trust. Wispact was founded in 2003 in Wisconsin by the elder law attorneys of Wisconsin, as well as some disability rights organizations. So Disability Rights Wisconsin, the ARC of Wisconsin, and the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. They are the groups that kind of started Wispact, and we are now managing more than 4,000 beneficiaries across the state. And we have almost 190 million in total assets in our pooled community trust. So we've been very successful, I feel, over the years. But one of that success comes from, we have a charitable fund. And I'd be glad to talk about that a little bit later. But our charitable fund gives out about $4 million per year directly to individuals with disabilities. So if you're a beneficiary of Wispact and you ever go to zero in your trust, you can apply for up to $5,000 a year in grants. Very, very helpful to people to pay for things like a property tax bill. You might be an individual with a disability and you own your own home, but at the end of the year, you get a $3,000 or $4,000 property tax bill. So if you're on that fixed income, very difficult to pay. We did a bunch of those. So that's kind of Wispact in a nutshell. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Tim, just a little bit, but should I go back and kind of talk about what these special needs trusts are and how they're
Yeah,
used?
I mean, you mentioned that, we have, everybody sort of has access to some financial options. We know how to open up, most of us know how to open up a regular savings account or open up a checking account. We help our kiddos
Sure.
to do that as well. But
Yep.
then we start to get into not all of our kids and not all of our relatives are able to successfully manage the financial system.
Sure.
And then we also have the added complexity of the rules and regulations that if you access, that second leg of the stool, those financial benefits, then it starts to impact what financial options are available to us. And
Yep.
so then we start to talk about, okay, if you are somebody with disabilities, in addition to these things which may or may not work for you, there's some other options
Yep.
that you have. So what are some of those other options?
Yeah, very good point, Tim. And I'm glad you brought this up because so the essential idea about behind these tools are if you are an individual with a disability and you're on some kind of public benefit, you have a $2,000 asset limit. So what these tools allow you to do, like a special needs trust, it allows you to put money aside in this special needs trust that is considered exempt from the beneficiary's income. So they can still collect their public benefit, but they have this additional money set aside in the trust. Now, the beneficiary can access the funds in that trust at any point, but the distributions from the trust are governed by IRS regulations. And Tim, this kind of goes back to your idea of managing this. So Wispact is professionally managed. We have a team of beneficiary specialists that go through training every year on these IRS regulations, and they are doing the distributions from the trust to ensure it meets its exempt status. Now, a big difference between a special needs trust and an ABLE account. An ABLE account is self-administered by the beneficiary and their support team. Now, ABLE accounts have not been around that long, so I do not know of this happening, but potentially if the distributions are not done properly, the IRS can say, hey, what's going on here? Let's take a look at this. It can lose its exempt status. So one is professionally managed, one is managed by the beneficiary and their support team. And I tell people when they're considering these, depending on the level of support that that beneficiary might need, you might want to use one or the other, or get this, you can also use them in combination. So you can use a special needs trust and put money into that ABLE account. The yearly limit is $15,000. So that beneficiary then can use that ABLE account more like everyday cash, but they have a additional special needs trust behind that. So it these can be very helpful. You can manage these, and there's combinations of them that you can use that I think could address pretty much everyone's needs.
Does
Very
a lot
quick.
of it, James, does a
Yep.
lot of it has to come down, does it come down to like the rules about what you can use the money for in a
Yep.
special needs trust versus an ABLE account? I mean, what sort of
Yep.
things
Yeah.
are you able to use, the beneficiary is able to use the money in the special needs trust for?
Yep. And so special needs trust, the main rule on distributions is the money can only go for the sole benefit of the beneficiary. And this is true for ABLE accounts as well. Seems pretty straightforward stuff for that beneficiary. But what it means in practice is we cannot dispense cash from the trust because the IRS says there's no record of where that money goes. So we have to have some kind of receipt documentation to indicate that product or service has gone to sole benefit. it can get very tricky. It can get very confusing. An example might be a beneficiary would call us and say, hey, a friend of mine wants to sell me his used 2001 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles. By the way,
Honda's a good car.
that's
yeah,
my car. I love that car.
200,000
I love
Civic,
that
sure.
car. Right.
Absolutely.
I love that car.
Absolutely.
Right. Sell me this car for, he's selling it to me for $7,000.
All right.
Hang on. The beneficiary specialist would say, I looked up the Kelley Blue Book value on that, and it's $1,200. Even during these post-pandemic times, you're not going to get $7,000 for a Honda Civic or 2001 Honda Civic. So that's an example where apparently somebody is trying to get cash out of the trust. You sell me this car, we'll split them, whatever, right? Somebody's trying to get cash out of that trust.
Yeah, and obviously that's not the point of the trust. That's not within the rules of what the trust is supposed to do.
It would lose its exempt status.
Which then means taxes come in to play, as well as that benefit limit. That asset limit is, we don't want the asset limit to come into play.
Right. Then it would be, they would be faced with spending that money down or losing their public benefits.
So then does that mean that they have to, and this is an honest question. Sometimes I ask questions that I know the answer to. This question I'm now just totally confused on, James, just so you know. So then in that case, would somebody else have to pay for the car and then get reimbursed from the special needs trust? Or how would that person, if the car was, if their friend said, hey, you know, I just need to get $750 out of this. Yeah. So it's below the Blue Book value. Yeah. Obviously transportation matters.
Right. Yes.
And so how would they then pay for that car if they don't have the access to the cash?
So here's another point on these trusts. And we can pay these in various ways. So that beneficiary specialist will work with the beneficiary. We might be able to pay the dealer directly. It might be a used car dealer. You can pay that dealer directly. Or we can reimburse that person or pay that person directly, you know, obtain the title, etc. for the car, right? So that person, the friend, becomes basically a car dealer, a vendor that we can deal with.
Okay.
But Tim, there are other, so with these trusts, you can't give that beneficiary cash directly, but you have, what you have is you can have several advisors to the trust. These are trusted individuals. We work with guardians, you know, siblings, parents across the state. These are trusted individuals for that beneficiary. They can turn in a receipt and get reimbursed. So that's another way to do it. But Tim, it's very important to have that receipt, because an example would be the beneficiary is a male in their 20s, let's say, and the person tries to turn in a receipt for women's shoes, right? So no, you can't reimburse that, because obviously it's not for sole benefit, right? So, and these can't be used for gifts. So
I was going to say, so that means that you're not looking at special needs trust for your Christmas shopping. It's the person with disabilities with special needs trust is not going to be able to use this money for Christmas or birthday presents. They're going to have to use part of their $2,000 asset that they have.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, and also with Wispact, you get that beneficiary specialist. They go through an exercise of financial management when you set up the trust, because let's say you get $50,000 or $60,000. Now, if I suddenly got $50,000 or $60,000, I'd probably want to run out and buy a new Honda Civic, right? rather than
2001. Yeah, I mean, they're good cars.
But so we'll sit down and do this exercise with the beneficiary and their advisors. Do you need new transportation right now? You know, is that 2001 Honda Civic running okay? Can you use it for your few needs around town? So We do a certain amount of financial management or financial support for that beneficiary, you know. So that's another thing about Wispact. And also we can do things like we can pay vendors directly phone bill. Rather than
Mhm.
doing 12 distribution requests, you can say, hey, I want this service throughout the year. Netflix, entertainment costs, they can be paid for. So subscription services can be paid for out of the trust. Um, so, but I don't like to sugarcoat that distribution process,
Right.
because really that's the heart of keeping this as an exempt status. We provide the tax documents at the end of the year to say this money was kept as an exempt. IRS, this person can still receive their public benefit. And that's some of the other differences with the ABLE account. One of the things about the ABLE accounts is you have to have acquired your disability before the age of 26 to be able to get one. Special needs trusts don't have that age limit. The other thing about ABLE accounts is there's yearly limits on how much you can put into them. There are no limits with the special needs trust. So if you want to give an inheritance to somebody of $100,000 or so, you're going to have to go with the special needs trust, because the ABLE account is, I think it's $15,000 per year. And then they have lifetime limits as well.
So let's talk about the money for a minute, James. I mean, we're
Sure.
talking about these things as if,
Yeah.
we have lots of money floating out there. And I know that a lot of families don't have
Right.
a lot of money floating out there, but yet
Sure.
they're still going to it's still relatively hard
Yeah.
to maintain under $2,000 in assets if you're receiving some sort of public benefits that's giving you maybe a cash supplement each month. And
Sure.
that can accumulate depending on your expenses. If your expenses are being covered by some
Right.
sort of subsidy, I mean,
Yeah.
that $2,000, you can get there even with low limited income. You can
And
get to that
you
2,000
don't need
really
another set
quickly.
of towels every month, right?
Right. And so then you're stuck with,
You
okay, I have to get under this
spending,
2,000 limit. So, I mean,
yeah,
do people need thousands upon thousands of dollars to
to
start a
start one
special
of
needs
these.
trust?
Very good question, because I'm going to delve off a little bit into, you can go to an attorney and get what's called a standalone special needs trust written for you. In that case, you will need to get a trustee bank or institution to hold the money.
Mhm.
Now, banks do not like to hold in a special account what they consider small amounts of money. And by small amounts here, I mean anything under 6 figures and really anything under $500,000. Now, the reason why is because you can spend this money down pretty quickly. So even $100,000 or so, that can go pretty quickly. A bank doesn't like to hold in this special account where they can't generate much interest income, off of this special thing that's going to be drawn down very quickly. They're having somebody call them up to do these distributions, all that. It's difficult to find a trustee bank. Wispact is a nonprofit in the state of Wisconsin, and we are a pooled community trust. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got over 4,000 beneficiaries. We've got 190 million in total assets. And what that allows us to do, one of the things that allows us to do is we do very small special needs trust.
Oh,
Our minimal trust size is $750, which is,
that's pretty
when
reasonable.
I was talking to a group of trustee officers at a bank recently, and they're like, what?
No, I mean
750?
that's less than it
Right.
costs to like open the premium checking at a bank.
Right. And that, the initial setup of Wispact was that's kind of how it was thought of. There wasn't ABLE accounts out there at that time. And so the idea of these attorneys was this provides us, someone could start one of these for 750. You can put additional deposits in them over time. So you can use them kind of like a savings account. They are not savings accounts, but for an individual with a disability, you can kind of use them like that to
You
kind of
can
build up some money, right?
exactly, you can use it
And
to, I mean, it's
and
not
then
a
buy
savings
that
account, but you can
Honda
save.
Civic. Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, because there's a
exactly.
lot of things we can't afford right off the bat is we all have to
Right,
save for them.
right.
And if you
And
can only save up to 2,000, if you want to buy anything that
right,
costs more than $2,000, you need to find some way to legally
put this aside,
save that
right?
money, put that money aside. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Now, and Tim, the scenario too, though, is I'll have people call me, hey, my son is 18. He's got a couple extra bucks. He's working. He's getting some money. I might suggest to them, you might want to look at the ABLE account as well. Now, Wisconsin doesn't have an ABLE program, but you can go to another state and get one. And one of the main differences, one of the challenges to a special needs trust is we do require that you go to an attorney to have one written. And so what I understand with the ABLE account is you can essentially, with the correct documentation, sign up for one online yourself in an
Hmm.
evening, right?
Yeah.
Now, Wispact, though, we do have a program. So we require that you go to an attorney, but we do have a program if you are doing a self-funded trust under 75,000 or a third-party trust under 90,000. So the self-funded is when the beneficiary themselves is putting their own money in the trust. The third-party trust is when a parent will put money in there for their child. Uncle Joe puts money in there for his nephew. Third-party trust. If you are doing a self-funded under 75 or a third party under 90,000, we provide a grant for up to $2,000 of the attorney fees.
Oh, wow.
So that in general, that $2,000 in the state of Wisconsin will cover the creation of one of these Wispact trusts. So, all you really have to do a Wispact trust is $750. And I would argue it's nice to talk to that attorney to get the legal aspects of these things, not what James Giese, the marketing guy, is saying,
Right.
right? This is going to be your legal representation that will tell you exactly what these trusts are, before you put that money, because these are irrevocable trusts. Once you put this money in there, the only way it's coming out is distributions to the beneficiary or what happens on the death of the beneficiary.
So
So,
let's not jump to the death yet. Let's
okay,
stick a little bit.
I
Okay,
don't,
let's
I
not
don't,
jump
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I want to cover because I know there's some differences there.
Right.
So I know I want to. We
Sure.
want. I mean, that's where we're
I
all
don't,
headed.
I
We're all
don't
headed
mean
there,
to
kids.
go there immediately.
No.
Right. I don't, but
So
it's,
what you're saying is that with seven
there's
hundred fifty
actually good
dollars.
news there on
Yeah, I know. I know. That's
there's
why
good
it's like okay.
news.
I want to get to that because there's good news
Right.
if you use Wispact. So 750 minimum. You
Right.
can apply for a grant that would pay 2,000 towards an attorney. Do you
Mm-hmm.
guys have, and this is again, I don't know. Do you have a list of attorneys that work specifically with special needs trusts? Or I know there's
Yeah.
some places that cannot recommend this
Right.
person to then work with us
Yes.
because then the
Right.
conflict of interest is really there.
Right. Right.
And so
And so,
how do people
yep.
find this lawyer?
Right. And so we have 2 attorneys on staff. They are not there to create trust. In fact, if you call them, they'll say, talk to your attorney. But we have a list of attorneys by county on our website. And these are primarily these elder law practicing attorneys. So this is the group that helped found Wispact. Our board of directors are still most of them are these elder law attorneys along with some advocates. We have a very active board, by the way. They are very involved with Wispact and our operations. But this list of attorneys is by county. These are these elder law practicing attorneys. I do recommend, though, when you call them up, just say, do you know about this creation fee grant? Don't be shy about that, because they have to apply for that creation fee grant during the creation process. So they don't charge you, they'll go ahead and apply for that during the creation process.
Okay, so you have to let them know up front that this is what your plan is.
It's just helpful if they know about that creation fee grant. And also, you know, this is for the creation of the trust. If they're doing other work for you, let's say they're doing some estate planning or a will or something, make sure they might be charging you additional for that. So, you know, just be upfront with that attorney and what they're charging you for. They do, so they will apply for that creation fee grant. A very small thing, maybe this isn't a small thing, but there's a $250 setup fee. That is also reimbursed. Some attorneys will include it as part of their work. Some attorneys will turn to the client and say, hey, you owe $250. Just realize that that will be reimbursed to the beneficiary, either by Wispact or the attorney will do it when they're creating the trust.
So Wispact seems like it was literally set up so that people who normally would not have access to trust, any kind of trust, as a vehicle for savings for the future, putting aside money for the future, using their living expenses, legally staying under that $2,000 asset limit, to try to open up this vehicle to people from all different incomes.
Exactly, Tim. And actually, so next year is our 20th anniversary. And I've been collecting some stories from some of the founders of Wispact. Roy Frumming, I don't know if you know him, Tim, you might know him. He was one of the original attorneys. Peter Grosskopf is another. Angela Colentos, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name. But these attorneys in Wisconsin got together and kind of said, hey, the federal law establishing these special needs trusts was in 1997. And they got together around 2000 and started saying, you know, this is a thing that we could really use. Why don't we make it one of these pooled trusts and try to help out everyone in the community rather than just someone with, you know, $500,000 to put into one of these trusts. Yeah, it's a really cool thing. And also, I don't want to boast about Wispact. We are one of the largest special needs trusts in the country now. And we have, in terms of beneficiaries and in terms of assets under management. Yeah.
So let me ask we know that disability spans, it's a whole spectrum of what it means to be disabled.
Sure.
What are the rules for being eligible for a special needs trust? Who determines that?
Yep, good question, Tim. So, and here's where I'm going to say, chat with your attorney. But the way I understand it, from a layperson's understanding, so you do have to have what I call a formal disability determination to get one of these trusts. Now, another wrinkle to this is with the elderly, you can get, so those over age 65 can get a MATA application, so that Medicaid eligibility application, that can serve in lieu of this formal disability determination for those over age 65. The way I understand it is the government essentially says, we don't expect the elderly to go out and do continuous work, right? So they can, if you're over age 65, you can do that MATA application, but otherwise you're going to need a formal disability determination. Yep.
And is there a level of severity, or it's just what if you get that determination, then you're eligible?
Yep, that's the way I understand it.
Okay. And are special needs trusts only for those that have to worry about that second stool? The second stool, the
Yep,
second leg of the stool, public benefits? I mean,
right.
if somebody is disabled, but they may not be eligible for public benefits, they may
Yeah,
not be
see,
using SSI for
right.
Medicaid or BR Badger Care. And so they don't have this
Yeah,
$2,000 limit, but
right.
yet they're worried about those future
Financial
expenses because
management,
everybody gets
return,
older
yes,
and those people that take care of
yes,
us tend to get older faster. Okay, not really faster,
yes,
but they're already
yeah,
further down the road of the journey.
right, right. And
So what's a tool for those people?
and Tim, that's a really good question. I've had phone calls and talked with potential clients that are looking for that kind of. I do not want to make these trusts out to be what used to be called like a spendthrift trust or a, these are not, these are designed to protect your ability to collect a public benefit. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you may be an individual like you could go on it, you might go off of this public benefit. So it could be very variable, but
You're absolutely right, James, because we do have
yeah,
people that it is their
I know.
participation in the public benefit comes and goes depending on their income level.
Right. And so with that, I would say you could get one, take advantage of this tool to use. And and so and I'm not an attorney here, so I don't want to say any of this, but the way I kind of understand it as a layperson is if you're not on that public benefit, the sole benefit rules really, they don't, the IRS rules don't really apply to these trusts, right?
Right.
So, Tim, I might say, hey, you might consider the ABLE account. Maybe that is a better tool for you
Mm-hmm.
in that case. So
So
it's
then we're
very
talking
tricky.
about
Yeah.
those financial option tools that are open for everybody, the estate planning, the other possibility of trust, the other ways to
Yeah. The
for
other
family
thing,
members to set aside money. One of the main things with special needs
yeah,
is that if you have that family member that wants to set aside money, you want to do it in a way that doesn't affect that public benefit.
right,
Whereas
right.
if you don't have to worry about that, then they can put that money into whatever financial vehicle they want
Yeah.
to give you that money because they don't have to worry about that asset limit.
And Tim, every time I'm on the call with you or do a presentation with you, somebody always asks me a question that I do not know how to answer. Right.
Oh yeah,
And,
no,
and
happens to
so
me every day, James.
I
Every
know,
day.
I know one time we had a similar question and I had to go back to my attorney and I can't remember exactly what she said, but basically the way I understood it was, hey, uh, you're kind of either on these public benefits or you're not, right? So
Yeah, and the special needs trust seems to
that
be very much
that
focused
that would
toward
be
that
the,
population that is on public benefits.
yep, exactly. Yep.
Okay, cool. So let's and enable accounts too. You do need some sort of disability
Yep.
determination.
Yep.
But there are some different rules. And I know that and
Yeah.
I will try to remember to put the Able Now Resource Center into the chat or
Yeah.
when I send
Yeah.
this out so that people
Yeah,
can
that's a
get the word
good
about Able Now. But I
resource.
do. So
And
let's jump to the
sure.
end because I know a lot of, I know some people who
Right.
they have elderly family members that have gone on to public
Right.
benefits. And so
Right.
they have this $2,000 asset limit and then the
Right.
person dies
Right.
um,
Right.
because that's what we're all going to do.
Right.
Um, so if somebody has been saving this money and people have been putting into that third person trust
Mm-hmm.
and the
Right.
person and they plan for this third person trust to help this person when they're 60, 70 years old, 50, and the
Mm-hmm.
person unexpectedly dies at 30.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of money sitting there.
Right.
What happens to it?
Sure. Great question, Tim. And I usually I usually start out my presentation more with this rather than at the end, but there are two types of trust you can create, and you really don't have a choice in it. It's dependent on the source of the funding. So when that beneficiary themselves is putting their own money in, self-fund it. You can put additional money in over time. And then when a third party is putting money in, it's a third party trust. Now, beneficiary uses these trusts the same during their lifetime. Some of our beneficiaries actually have both. They'll have their own self-funded,
Oh, yeah.
making a couple extra bucks, putting it in their own self-funded trust, but they also have a third party trust that their parents have created for them. Now, beneficiary uses these the same during their lifetime. The only difference is what happens to the remaining assets in that trust on the death of the beneficiary. In the self-funded trust, any remaining assets will be subject to estate recovery by the state. So the state will come along and say, hey, over the lifetime of this individual, we paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars. We will attempt to do an estate recovery on any remaining money. And the third party trust is not subject to estate recovery because the state says that money was never that beneficiary's to begin with.
Right.
Parents put that money in there for them to use. So in that case, any remaining assets in that trust go to any remainder heirs or beneficiaries that are named when the trust is created. So one subject to estate recovery, one is not. It's dependent on the source of the funding. The other wrinkle about that self-funded trust is in the state of Wisconsin, they say if it doesn't pay back 100%, it goes into Wispact's retained fund. And as you can imagine, some of these public benefit estates they're extensive. It can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might have $2,000 or $3,000 left in your trust. The state says, we won't attempt to recover that. It can go into Wispact's retained fund. Our retained fund cannot be used for any of our operating expenses. It can only be used for other beneficiaries. So we have this program where we can pay for that creation fee grant. That's where that money comes from. It's legacy money left over from other beneficiaries. We also have a program, if you ever go to zero in your trust, you are still considered a beneficiary of Wispact, and you can apply for up to $5,000 a year in grants. So it doesn't mean we just give you $5,000. You do have to apply for it. But if it meets that sole benefit rule, in general, these are approved. So it can be very helpful. Even if you go to zero in that trust, that person could start applying for those $5,000 a year grants. And like I mentioned earlier, last year we gave out close to $4 million. The year before that was about $3 million. And I'm sure this year we're probably around $4 million again, if not more.
So those grants, like you said, those are funded by the generosity sometimes of people who have
It's
written the trust saying,
self-funded
there's no other
trust.
beneficiary. We want it to go back to Wispac to be
Right.
used for other beneficiaries. And when the
Yeah.
state says, that is not enough money that we want to bother with, so put it toward the other beneficiaries. We know that
Yeah.
that is valuable.
It's going back out into the economy. It's going back out to this, literally these are people that you're zero in your trust, you're on public benefits, you're basically living at $24,000 a year, right? That $2,000 asset limit. So, and this is $4 million directly to that population. I mean, all kinds of things. A new washing machine. A while back, somebody wrote us a letter. Thank you very much for fixing my washing machine. I don't have to go out into the Wisconsin winter to go down to the laundromat anymore. So it may seem like, really small kind of things, but to me, that's a big deal. You know, I hate going to go to the laundromat,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or hey, you know, for
Well,
me, it would be my brakes have gone on my 2001 Honda Civic. You know, I need $700 to get it fixed, right? So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that Wispact is doing here, I feel. Um,
I hate to, I have now figured out that I have monopolized the entire question and answer period.
I'm sorry.
So no,
and
no,
I,
no. This is no, this is
and
this
I,
is not, this
yep,
is my
I,
fault. But I do know that we have some people that have joined us. And so I just wanted to give the
sure.
option that if there are questions that you wanted to put into the chat, if you wanted to unmute, I would be able to see you unmute and I could call on you so that you could ask your question. Please feel free to, and I know this is really a complicated topic. And so I'd understand that it may take longer than I could ever give you to type out
To
your
figure out,
question.
yeah.
But James did put his email there. And
Yeah.
if it's not you, I know you will help them find someone who it is. And so it's not like they're going to email you and you're going to go, nah, not me. Sorry. Thanks.
Right.
You're going to
I
work
will
with them.
attempt to, I'll send it on to our attorney. We also have, you know, that team of beneficiary specialists. We have two individuals, our executive director and our associate director, that have about 30 years of experience with these special needs trusts. So a lot of questions I direct to them as well. And also behind Wispact is that board of the elder law community in Wisconsin. So we've got a lot of resources to call on as well. And also, Tim, I wanted to quickly mention, so a lot of people ask me, how's Wispact funded? How do we do this? Well, we're that pooled community trust. That 190 million is professionally invested for us. So these do earn investment income. Now, quick to tell people, the main reason you're getting this is to protect your ability to collect a public benefit. But for 7 of the last 7 years, we've managed to make enough investment income to pay for our sub-accounts management fees. Plus, you might earn some investment income as well.
Oh,
So, yep, that's how we're funded. People often ask that. And Tim, we kind of monopolized this whole thing. Please I'll just shut up and please ask a question.
Well, no questions are appearing in the chat, which with this topic does not surprise me because usually, other times when we have this sort of, more of a formal presentation, the questions usually come into, I have a relative who has this, and then we pull in this, and then this is happening, and it's impossible to really answer.
Yeah,
over a presentation anyway.
And
it usually
if anybody, they can call
me.
me. I'd be glad to talk to them, or the relative, or the uncle, or whoever, potential clients, or maybe not. They just want more information about these. That's my job at Wispact. So at wispact.org, it's got our phone numbers and listings. I can't remember my Wispact number. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I will look it up along with your home phone number, your cell number. And I may even find your social security number. And I will put all those out into a resource sheet.
Please do so.
Absolutely, along with any credit card information that I'm able to find.
And my assets, 2001 Honda Civic.
Yep. Oh yeah. Now we will be on the
miles.
lookout for.
Don't take that. I love
it. No. You seem to be attached to your Honda Civic, James. You seem to really enjoy
Don't take
that.
my Honda Civic away.
Don't take my.
It was really hard to get started this morning. By the way, it did not appreciate being left outside in the cold.
No. With that, when you get even a tenth of an inch of layer of ice over a 2001 Honda Civic, it's done. Yeah, no, it's like, okay, well, I obviously don't have to start.
They want to try, but
they don't want to do anything in this weather.
Give it a good college try.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were able to not have to go to work today.
Yeah, I'm
that you
working,
were able to join us from your
working
satellite
remotely.
office,
Yes.
which I greatly appreciate that you didn't
Kitchen.
cancel on us. Appreciate that. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you
Yes. Thank you,
for
Jim.
the opportunity for people to learn more about what
Yes.
some of the financial options are for people with disabilities. And I know it's a much bigger subject that we could cover in 45 minutes. We'll
Sure.
try to have other topics throughout the year, but if you have any specific questions, please contact James. As you
Yeah.
can tell, you're rather
Ready.
approachable.
Yeah, I'm glad to take any call, question, whatever. If I can't answer it, I'll send it on to the attorney.
All right. Well, thanks again, James, for being here. And
Thank
thanks
you,
everybody for
everyone.
joining us.
Thanks.
Next Wednesday, so this was a strange Tuesday element of conversations because tomorrow I'm somewhere else. But then a week from Wednesday, we have our monthly movies at Wasteman. So please feel free to join us. There's information about that on the Conversations website. We're going to be looking at Lives Worth Living, about how did this disability rights movement start and how did the ADA come to be? So come learn a little bit about history. It'll be really fun next Wednesday.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Jim.
lot.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.